Okay.
Hey, SightShift friends, welcome. I am so excited for you to meet another friend, Denise DeLong. Denise, glad you could be here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a privilege to have you. I'm so inspired by you because, a little context, for us walking through transformation with organizations, it's one of those things where when we're in a situation where there's a person like yourself, a visionary who's been leading at the helm, woman-owned business in the construction industry. So for listeners, right, we've already hit some things that make you stand out. To have the kind of growth that you've had, and in the middle of that, be also at a place where you're thinking beyond and transition and all that. What a privilege to be in this space with you. And the thing that I really want to kick off with is, where did this passion for growth and learning come from? I mean, in your old office, there's this bookshelf of books, and you're like resourcing your leaders with books.
Yeah, right.
Has that been with you as long as you can remember? Was there a light bulb that went off?
Man, well, so I've always had a passion for, I'm going to say, when I say always, for education, right? But I think there was a pretty significant period of time. And well, let me back up. So I went for my MBA after I was already in the workplace. And I did that and had my first child and worked full time, had a promotion. Literally, I think one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. And I believe I burned myself out. So there was a period of time between that and then working in the business instead of on the business, where I didn't have the time to really spend on continuing to learn and develop. Yeah. And then what happened was, and I don't even remember when it started, but whatever, the fire got lit. And once that fire got lit, it's not slowed down. And I think part of the reason why it got lit, right, is because I saw how I started to transform the business as a result of learning. And so it just kind of, I guess it evolved naturally. And then once I started moving, it's like you can't look back.
Oh man, that's so cool. All of our conversations, the connection, the closeness, that was something I was so excited to ask, just because it doesn't come up in the flow of our work together.
Right.
But yeah, I hear about what you're saying, like, hey, I'm reading this new book, and to stay on the edge and to stay almost like passionate about growth through the challenges you've been through is truly rare and commendable. To give folks a sense of kind of the complexity of what you face and the challenge of what you face, tell us a little bit about the story with Singleton, where you've come from, where you're at, and where you're headed.
So the story is my mom and Chris Singleton actually founded Singleton. And when that happened, I think we're 26 years ago. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom and needed to create a career, and they got involved in residential construction. And when they did that, they were approached by Walmart through a family friend, but approached by Walmart to do subcontractor work for Walmart. And they did that. And then, but slowly but surely through the years, they went from a subcontractor to contract management, and then up to full general contractor. So again, they had an evolution. So from basically residential up to general contractor in a commercial space. And they only did it for Walmart. And so they did that for years. And then my mom, she was a traveling superintendent, and she did that because in their opinion at that time, my mom had a difficult time working with the men at Walmart in the construction group. And again, I'm just saying that was the current situation they were under. And so she kind of got pocketed into working with our own teams, but she did a fantastic job at it. And so Chris Singleton would work with the Walmart management, and then mom would work with the field teams and manage the projects. And she did that for years. And then she got breast cancer. So when she got breast cancer, you can't travel the country and do construction projects and manage the projects and have cancer. Those two don't go along.
Mm.
So when that happened, she'd approached me and said, would you come in and take over or think about it? And at first I was like, no. Then I started feeling guilty. I said, well, you can't help your mom, right? What? So I quit my career, and I felt I had a career. I had a path that I had picked, and I was going down that path, and it definitely wasn't construction. So I came in, and it took, I don't know, I would say 5 years. It took a while before I felt like I wasn't making a sacrifice in my previous career, and that this became kind of my destiny versus me just helping my mom.
Wow. That is so encouraging, I think, for anyone listening to this. And we got such a big picture view we're going to give people on that encouragement. But yeah, sometimes we're cooperating with something that's unfolding in our lives. We don't set out with that vision or intention, that bloom where you're planted. There's a reason that sticks around, right?
Yeah.
That's inspiring. So as you look at coming in and then getting into that, I love that word, destiny, over that 5-year period, tell us a little bit about the snapshot of kind of what the size of the business was like now, or then, and where it's at now. Because I think what people need to understand is, the complexity of what you're facing and what you've been through. You've seen a lot. You've done a lot.
Yeah. So I was the first employee. We didn't have any employees. And we had one construction team. And that team could do one Walmart renovation project at a time. And what happened was, as soon as I got involved, I don't know, my mom did training, right? But really quickly, as soon as I could do it on my own, I did it. So let's say within 6 months or so, that my mom would only occasionally get involved if I needed her to help with something. And I came in May, and in November, went into a annual meeting for Walmart, and they changed everything. So I'm going to give you an example, like safety, right? My mom didn't have a documented safety program. Well, most people might not know what a documented safety program is for a construction company, but it's a comprehensive document, right? And so that's just one example of many different processes and procedures that we didn't have in place. And so I remember leaving that meeting, and I got a massive headache, and I was just from the stress of it. And I was just like, how does one person do this? But I didn't have a choice, because it was either and you're talking from November to had to be in place by January. And if I didn't have it in place, we couldn't bid. We couldn't participate in that next year's of projects. So I literally came home and just worked until I could get as much of it as in place as possible so that we could start that year. And there were a whole lot of other changes, not just process and procedure, but people. I needed to have teams and help, and on and on. And so first employee, and then again through the years. But I started, I think we had like $200,000 in cash, right? And so the other piece of that is that you're bootstrapping it. So everything you do, you have to be frugal. You have to be conscientious of money. And debt to me was bad. My mom had some, different things happen in her life. And so I was just, hey, I need as much flexibility as possible, so I don't want debt. So I just slowly but surely, right? Just, year after year after year, just, continue to grow and continue to develop it. And again, I think that's part of why I grew slow and it took me so long. Somebody be more aggressive might have done it a lot faster than what I did. But again, I still think it was the path that we were supposed to go in.
Yeah. Well, you've got what I've observed is a real sense of trusting your intuition at those moments when you're setting pacing or directional decisions. And so now you guys have how many team members, employees, and tell us about a little bit of the scope of the kind of projects you're doing.
Yeah. I think we're probably close to 110. And then, so we were doing seven to 8 projects a year when I started. That's assuming they weren't doing any what we call special projects, smaller projects. So let's say 10 at the most to thousands now. And I say thousands, and that can be a little bit crazy to people, but we do a high number of really small projects that might be 4 hours to a day to 4 days, on to, 4, 5, 6 month projects. But literally we do, and we had one customer, right? Just Walmart. And now, we have, I don't know, probably 12 really, really solid customers and top brands that everybody would recognize. And so there's no comparison, right, as to where we're at and where we started and where we're at now, which to me is so cool, because this is what I tell people all the time, is that I look at what we were even just 5 years ago, right? And I'm like, okay, if in the next 5 years that we have, and I'm not talking revenue, I'm not talking dollars and profit, I'm talking people and what you can accomplish and what you can do in this world, what the platform we have now, what they can do in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's just super exciting. So you think of like me, 16 years from one person to where we're at now. So can you imagine the velocity, right? Just the mathematical equation between now and what the next 16 years could bring this group of people.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and what's coming through, because I want to draw attention to this for people listening, is that the passion here is people, like the people we're going to be able to give jobs to, and through giving them jobs, give them a great culture and develop them and grow them. And that's the thing that, stands out so huge, because we get distracted by, almost like this false illusion of business and the kinds of businesses we build. And here you are in an industry that is definitely not naturally pro women. Right. All of the history and the baggage of that, not saying anything negative. It just is. We can be honest about, and stayed with it and grown it. And that's the thing for me that is powerful about the story. And for too many people, they get distracted by almost like this business has to look cool and be cool. And I can tell you, oftentimes those are the most broke businesses.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's in the raw guts of doing work that adds value and impacting people. So as you've been on this journey, really coming into that moment with your mom and the transition and almost burning yourself out and learning like crazy, you've seen cycles and seasons and transitions. This is kind of a lot of times where I'll end the episode, but I want to start here, if you will. What do you see happening right now? And maybe we could even make this really pointed to women in business. What do you see happening right now in the business world and the economy and all that's going on? And where do you think people like yourself out there listening need to be encouraged the most?
Oh, man. If we want to talk about diversity, right? If we want to talk about women in construction, I think that, so first of all, I think it's exciting that people are focusing on getting more women interested in, and again, that's just taken off on that one part of what your question or statement was, but I think it's super exciting that we're being more deliberate about getting women interested in construction, for sure, because it's needed. Construction is one of the most complicated fields in this country. I mean, they compare it to the medical field. That's why we have all these different disciplines within construction, just like how we have all these different disciplines in medicine. Wow. Because the human body is highly complex. Construction is highly complex. Yeah. And so there's always room for complex problem solving. Yeah. And this is not to say anything about men or women, different, whatever, but it's a fact, right? The women's brain, there's less space between those two sides of your brain, right? So women can do really, really well just at being successful within the construction industry, just because the complexity of it, how much you have to pivot, the problem solving, juggling lots of different things. I think it's a great fit for, women in construction. So I'm excited about that, about getting more interested, because it's a fantastic career field. The one thing I'm going to have to say, I think maybe concerns me a little bit, and this is part, people ask me this question all the time, that it's like people want to see, and I guess I shouldn't say that. Sometimes I feel like people want to see that I've not been treated right. They want to see that I've been treated differently, or, I have that story of, abuse, neglect. But I think that my take has always been, I don't see myself different.
I'm loving this. Yeah.
So since I don't see myself different, I don't look for the differences.
Yeah. Yeah.
You put your head down, and I'll give you a great example. Like, I'll go to events and there'll be a group of people, whatever, smoking cigars, right? I don't smoke cigars. So I can either just go in there and talk to them while they're smoking their cigars and, like, who cares, right? Or I can be like, oh, they're smoking cigars and I don't smoke cigars, and now we're different and I don't feel like I'm included and I don't feel like I'm part of them. And so I just really believe that we can't focus on the differences. You focus on what you are good at, and you build relationships and you meet them wherever they're at and whatever common you do have. So I don't smoke cigars, but we both have kids. So we can talk about kids, right? So I just really believe that if you go down the path and you focus on the negative and you focus on the differences, that's all you're going to see, versus building the common ground where you do have something in common. Yeah. So that's always my caution. And again, I know everybody's got a different story about it, and some people have not been treated fairly, and et cetera. But I've just put my head down and you just push forward. So
yeah. Wow. Yeah. People are looking for that salacious story. And it's like, okay, surely, no doubt, there has been massive stories of trauma or whatever.
Yes.
But if the regular rhythm was this kind of victorious mindset rather than a victim mindset, how much more starts to work out, because we're not creating that unnecessary friction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. That's awesome. So did that come kind of naturally to you when you were stepping into these conferences and it was just there, or did you have a moment where you had to kind of like stumble for a second and learn it?
I have been in survival mode for 16 years.
Yeah.
So you do what it takes to be successable, and you make it work.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. So if you think about, like, what you mentioned, the victim mentality, right? So if you have the mentality of where you have to be successful, you have to be, and I'm not talking about compromising any of your values or at all, right? That's never a question, right? That's meaning, ground zero, you are staying true to what you believe, right? But you got to make it work, and and you just have to pivot, and you just have to continue to plug along, because to me, the whole is better than the part, right? So if you have to compromise, and I don't mean compromise in a bad way, but if you have to just push to make everybody successful, then you do what it takes to make sure that everybody is successful. So
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to nerd out here a little bit. There's a movie called Interstellar. Have you seen it with Matthew McConaughey? And they're in space, and this catastrophe has happened. And the basically computer was like, that's impossible. It says that to the McConaughey character. And he goes, impossible, but necessary. Yeah. Like that, I mean, I feel like, our spirit is so connected on this. It's been a number of years and reinventions, and it's a scrappiness, and you're just like, you got to find the way. You wake up on Monday and you're like, this is what I got to get done. I don't know how, but I got to find that way.
Yeah. And part of that also is, so one of our values is delivering excellence, right? And one of the things we say to people all the time is you solve the problem, right? So you can't deliver excellence by giving the problem to somebody else and expecting them to solve it, right? So it's that drive to truly fix things and make things better, and not have that attitude where I'm going to hand it off to somebody else. And so we work on that all the time at Singleton. And new people coming onto our organization. They don't know that. They don't understand that. They've not experienced that. They've not been required to do it before. And it's hard to take on the responsibility of, this is my problem, nobody else's problem, and I have to fix it.
Yes.
So.
Anybody listening to you talk right now can hear like, okay, this woman has a deep well of wisdom to offer. You're in, and honestly, a lot of our connection, I'm pouring into you. So I'm loving this right now. Like you're pouring it out, with the battles, with the wisdom. We always have another frontier, and you can be as vulnerable in this as you want to be. I know can't share everything, but where right now do you find yourself challenged? What's that next horizon you're trying to step into, grow into, and learn?
Oh man. I think that my biggest challenge is, well, first of all, right, is to figuring out, and you and I, of course, have had so many conversations about this, right, that what is the next thing that I'm supposed to work on within the business, right? So, you go from one to some to many for support. And, we have this exercise in the business that we call start, stop, continue. And so if you get a new role, it's what are you going to stop doing? And then what do you have to start doing? And what are you going to do that you did before? And so with me, that's been a constant challenge as the business has evolved, is to, where am I supposed to plug in? Where do I add the value? What is the most important piece that I bring to Singleton, as well as becoming a more secure leader in there. You got to layer that in there also, right? Because I can't it's one thing when you're doing, when you've got a project and you have activities that you have to do to that project, versus now I have to lead a business. I have to motivate a business. I have to, it's the soft, it's the not concrete deliverables that I have to provide. So you go from concrete deliverables to soft, fuzzy deliverables, and requires a different person, requires different skills, as well as it's harder to identify what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So I think it's that whole transition from day to day. I didn't have to think about what I was going to do. It was driven. Hey, you have to do this because it's coming at you, to now you have to plan and be more deliberate about activities. And it's at a totally different level. You're trying to inspire people versus just getting work done. Yeah. That's well said. That time horizon changes because you're like, this is what's coming at me. And then you shift into, what am I preparing us for that's coming next? And that's why I think, you've got so much critique in so many different spaces regarding business. And we always need voices that are out there, kind of the prophets in the wilderness, calling us to our ethical best. But too often the peanut gallery, weighs in. And unless you've been in that place navigating those complexities, it's just hard to understand that transition. What through these transitions and seasons you've been through, and this is going to be probably a difficult question to answer because you're a growth-oriented person, you want to improve. But what have you learned to really appreciate about who Denise is? What do you like about yourself the most? I think I like the most about myself that I want to grow and I want to be better and I want to develop. I think that not everybody's that way, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That I have friends that are just completely comfortable in where they're at in life and what they're doing in life. And that's great. But at the same time, I don't think that Singleton would be where it was at if I didn't have that drive to get better and to be better and to make us better and to make the people working for me better, right? So I really think that drive to be better, even though in a certain way, if it's not managed correctly, right, it could be an insecurity, right, versus just truly trying to achieve something. So I think that's, to me, one of the things that I value the most is that I just don't ever give up, and I'm always trying to be better. So.
Oh yeah. Inspired by that. So you talked about this insecurity, security, and for those listening that know SightShift, they know this language.
Right.
And this is not something I don't think I've ever asked before, but it's showing up now. And so I ask this, and then I'll get to I think the bigger implication. What drew you in first? Hearing me kind of talk a little bit about this, what was the thing that you were like, I think there's more there for me?
Oh man, I think that, so I'm always trying to find the root cause of things, right? If we're going to truly fix a problem, you have to understand what the root cause of that problem is. And let's say you don't know the root cause, you can come up with lots of solutions. And this is some basic, like lean, like manufacturing, construction concepts, right? And how you solve a problem, the 5 whys, etc. But that it's, and there's so much leadership content out there, so much, right? So you literally could read, I don't know what, hundreds of books and on communication and all kinds of ideas on how to improve your communication, all kinds of ideas. But to me, what SightShift did was showed a tool to use to figure out the root cause of communication problems. And I say problems, but obviously it's much deeper than that. But sure. So that's why I think I was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've ever been exposed to anything that I could look at and say, now I know why I'm doing that. Now I know why she's doing that. Now I know why he's doing that. And then when you can get to that level, you can actually fix the problem.
Yeah.
If not, you just got a tool. Well, yeah, you just keep learning that tool. But if you don't figure out what the root cause of it is, you're going to have to use that tool 1,000 times. So that's to me what was most impactful is that, and it made absolute total sense.
So encouraging. I mean, I love it because, I see so many get on this treadmill of getting those tools. We could think about like the fruit of the tree, getting those skills, the trunk, skipping over the root, what is shaping that behavior. And when people get it, it changes everything. I do have to say, like, some people get it like at the 3-foot end of the pool. Some people get it at the really deep end of the pool. And you really had ability to grasp the real full implication in a deep way. What still sticks with you the most, going through that process, learning about secure identity and the work you did?
So first of all, what sticks me the most is it never goes away, right? I believe that just like what you've talked about, that you feel like we're born with a dominant fear. And so in my mind, I don't ever expect it to go away. I expect it, just like what you talk about, hiding or proving, right? So it's looking for those flags. It's looking for the behavior, but it's not going to necessarily go away. And again, I could be wrong, but I just think it's so embedded into our fabric. Like I talked about, like what I appreciate the most about me is being better. Well, part of that is driven by my performance fear, right? So if I am so driven by performance, well, if you're not getting better, how do you have good performance, right? So either way, so I don't think necessarily it's going to go away. It's just that we're going to get better at recognizing it, and then we can also kind of train our brain to go down different patterns. Instead of down a negative pattern, to go down, positive or relaxed pattern, right? To be able to relax into it versus being stressed and pushing forward.
Somebody pull up a chair because Denise is teaching SightShift. This is awesome. I mean, it's this idea, new levels bring new devils. And so just even a couple of days ago, there was an opportunity where, I and a teammate could be there, and I trust him to be there for me. That's the nature of a team, right? And I couldn't be there. But what was wild to me was, because it was a much more significant responsibility, big implications for the impact of the business, this thing showed up just for a moment. I felt it come up in me. It was like, Chris, you got to go.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well, why do I feel like I got to go?
Yeah.
Oh, because I have to make sure I control something rather than trusting this teammate.
Yeah. Right.
And I know nobody listening to this podcast now has ever struggled with whether or not I should over control or under control something. But I was like, oh man, I'm going to step into a mode. I'm going to be proving I have to release this.
Yeah,
I trust this person.
Yeah.
So that was a couple of days ago. And if I sat down and thought long enough, I could tell you about a story this morning. you know, that's the nature of it.
It's incessant. Yeah. I think it's incessant. And there's a lot of it that I don't think I catch, right? Or probably a ton of it I don't catch, but I look at it as, we're evolving, right? And so I know it, I'm catching some of it. But not knowing it, you have no chance to catch it.
Yeah.
No chance at all. So without having, and that's where I talked about where you said about learning, right? So if I wouldn't have been in learning mode, I would never have met you. I would never have, what's interesting to me, right? It's even when you talk about, well, let me back up. So one of the things I explained to some of the people, as many as I can at work that I work with, is that as I am not out at activities and events and conferences as much as I used to, right, that I need them to always have their sense of awareness on who they're supposed to meet and who they're supposed to follow up with, right? So back up, if I wouldn't have had a learning mentality, I would never have met you. Right? Because I met you because I was part of a group that we network and learn from each other. Then I meet you. And if I wouldn't have followed up, then I wouldn't have spent all this time with you. Right. So to me, it's not also just about that learning attitude. It's that, how do you follow up and how do you decipher who we're supposed to be plugged into and who we're not? But regardless, I encourage all the people that I work with, and as they're released more and more into activities and conferences and things like that, is that if they don't continue that growth, then we could stall, because a big part of the change I try to put in place is by making those connections with other human beings. I mean, exposed to things like SightShift.
Yeah. That's powerful. I mean, it's like I've been saying lately, awareness is the answer. What's the question? I mean, that's that starting point. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
When you, so kind, I mean, I'm just inspired. I'm really inspired because I don't often get surprised. And in our journey, there was a moment where I was like, okay, Denise is at a crossroads. Is she going to, and no doubt towards you at all. It's just such a big thing. Is she going to step into the next iteration of what's happening, when really you think about it now as a third generation, transition, that is so fraught with so many pitfalls and ditches. And when you get into multi-generational transition, there is a reason this goes so wrong.
Right.
And here's what I see over and over and over. People in your spot, the CEO owner, they will either go to one extreme and give lip service to a transition, but not heart service.
Yeah.
They don't really back it up. They don't put their, hands on their child's shoulder and look them in the eye and go, there's going to be a transition here, and I'm going to start trusting you to lead the way.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm here beside you, right?
Yeah.
They either give lip service to that and not heart service, or they just keep putting it off. They're never going to actually step into it. And I watched you say it, and now you've been doing it. Yeah. And wow.
And part of the putting off too, I say, is that the reason why I think people put it off is it's hard. It is so hard. I mean, we were meeting with attorneys like 2 weeks ago, just planning. And it's mind boggling. The complexity of trying to plan for the next generation of who is going to own and be involved with Singleton's ownership is so complicated. And I see why people don't do it. It's hard. You have to have difficult conversations. You the options, even just to analyze all the options. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. But one thing that I think that is so important is that I remember being part of a group, and this goes years ago. And I went into, they had a meeting, and I went in, and there were it's like a business networking group, right? And there was like 7 of us, and 2 of them had family businesses. And they both had damaged relationships within that business, whether it be their brothers or whether it be their fathers or whether it be their mothers. These 2 is mainly brothers and fathers, right? And they had damaged relationships. And one of the guys, I said to him, this was a very successful business, lots of wealth, and he and his dad's relationship was damaged now. And I told him, I said, how much money do you need?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how much money do you really need? Do you really need to damage your relationship with your dad? Because you guys already have millions and millions of dollars, but they wanted more, right? And he felt like he deserved it now because he was doing the job and his dad wasn't, right? But regardless, I think that's where you have to look at what's your driver. Is it money or is it relationships? If your driver's relationships, then it's the relationships which is most critical, which then that's where you focus on developing. But if it's on money, then it's about power. It's about ego. It's about, I do that better, or, et cetera. So I just really think that if you can focus on the relationship piece being the most important thing, which money will come when you do that, but also not just money, but joy and happiness and things outside of that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. If money's what's foundational, it's going to make all the problems worse. If it follows the relationship, it can amplify all the good parts and help protect in the bad parts. Because as you're talking about, you're going through this transition, conversation with the attorneys, those kind of conversations are cast so much light on every crevice of every option that it draws out any shadow. It draws out these hard conversations. And it's another opportunity, right, to pay attention to where we're proving or hiding, how we're learning to be secure in this. And for me, I'm just chills just hit me thinking about it. You are establishing a legacy through not only how you started, that 5-year period of it, not only how you've built it up to what it is, but for this next leg of the journey with Singleton, what it means to run through that phase of the tape well, so to speak, run through that tape like a great runner. Really, really awesome. For leaders out there as a whole, because we know any leader listening to this is facing complex environments, all kinds of uncertainties. What would just be something you would love to give folks as they have a strong, encouraging takeaway, other than the takeaway we've already hit from this episode today?
I think that, with me, right, when you focus on the relationships, then you naturally focus on being a stronger leader, and which I already mentioned that, right? But if I focus on the business activities, I can get off the mark, right? And I think part of that is too, let's say, performance fears or whatever that might be, right? Project goes, is unsuccessful, customer's unhappy. And before you know it, I'm going down the path of not being the kind of leader, like what you talk about, sage, right? But not being the leader that I want to be. And so I think that it's just, for so many years, right, I focused on the mechanics of the business. Not that I don't care about people and treat people well, or we wouldn't be where we're at today, right?
Sure.
But I just think that as leaders, we have to do a really good job of understanding the impact that we're having on the people. And, there's been so many times where I used to almost get frustrated because I'm like, I can't say anything because they're going to get upset. But it took me a long time to figure out the power of and the influence I had, because I didn't look at myself as powerful. I didn't look at myself as influential. But if I say something in the wrong way to somebody, I crush them, right? It just really impacts, who they are, what they believe about themselves, and how they feel about working for me.
Yeah.
So I just really think that, focusing on those leadership skills and how we treat people, and we're going to get a bigger impact. So you talk about legacy, right? So that's where you get the legacy. I'm not going to get the legacy from, bringing in more revenue. I'm going to get the legacy by when I'm at the funeral and all of the people from Singleton are there and can tell great stories about what we did. That's the legacy.
Yeah.
But it's hard to keep that in the front of your mind when you've got all these business activities and details and minutia to focus on that, right? So I think that for so long I was so stuck in the business, right? And not that I still don't have these issues, but just focus on the legacy, the impact, the people side of it. Don't let that get away from you and only focus on the minutia of the day-to-day of what's being done. Mechanicals of business, I guess I would say.
That's awesome. I have no doubt people are listening to this going, they're stressed over a mechanical and they're like, okay, how can I get to the heart of this with the person? Something that was really huge for me. I don't remember if I've shared this here or, it's been a while, but, I'm 30 years old. This is 16 years ago, and I'm leading with all this vigor and enthusiasm and the vision and the vision and the vision. Yeah. And my friend was like, dude, the vision is the people. And it just knocked me back. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like the point of an institution, a workplace, an organization, whatever, it's to make people better.
Yeah.
And yes, what we're doing together collectively for this organization to add value and drive economic impact matters. So our organizations need a vision, but ultimately at the core, the vision's of the people.
Yeah, right. And I think that, again, that's with me, right? It was that I was so stuck in the mechanics of making this work, because that was my big challenge, that it just took me a while. And I think I'm there, but more work is needed, right? And that's, again, that whole stop, start, and continue, right? As I evolve into that, it's how do I now, focus more on the people and not on the mechanics, and really build people up that way. So what a great opportunity, right? To be able to do that. I mean, I could be stuck in the mechanics and we wouldn't have grown to the point where I could do that. Because I truly do believe that's where my heart's at, is to do that. Now I just have to figure out how to do it. But
yeah. Well, and true to leadership, the how will come. You've got the what and the why, and I hear it. I feel like I've been able to see it today, and that's been a gift to me and a gift to everyone listening or watching. Thank you, Denise, for coming on here and sharing your story. Such a privilege to have you.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you.
Thank you.